So at the beginning, I'd like to forward the best greetings of the Deputy Prime Minister for Education of Slovak Republic, Svetlana Sitova, who should have been here with you today. But of course now the situation is quite always changing all the time. So she was called by the minister, so I'm here replacing her. But I think that you won't regret it. First, I can assure you that I'm not going to deliver any kind of bureaucratic or political stuff. So and I'm here working. I'm now working at the Ministry of the Education, not Department of Inclusion, as Barbara said, but Department of National Minority Schooling and Lifelong Learning. It's quite long name, but my work is related also to the inclusion somehow. I work now at the ministry, but at the same time I also teach. So I'm also a teacher. So I teach at the university here in Bratislava. So I'd like to teach, to tell the truth. So that's why I was telling that I'm not going to speak as a bureaucrat, but rather as a teacher. So what I would like to say you, and maybe that I will speak maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then I think it will be better that we just be engaged in some kind of interactive dialogue. So what's important for me when I speak about inclusion or inclusive education? So I'm a human rights lawyer or human rights activist, and I also worked in diplomacy. I was posted for several years in Geneva, and I was representing Slovakia at the United Nations Human Rights Council, Human Rights Commission. So my perspective or vision of inclusivity or inclusive education is a human rights perspective, primarily a human rights perspective. And I think that I don't know whether you of course you know the UN and the Council of Europe documents on human rights and the right of education. I think as back as in the first commentaries of the committee on the CESTR, I mean the Committee on the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which first codify the right of education as an international right, especially the work of Mrs. Katarina Tomaszewicz. I think that which is written now, so the 4 A's, which is that 2 main elements of quality education. I think that it's exactly the definition of the inclusive education, in spite of the fact that it is not called in early 90s, it was still not called as inclusive education, but I would say rather quality or whatever kind of education. But I think it's still pertinent. So what do we mean by inclusive education? But which is more important from my point of view, that at one time it's a human rights concept, on the other time in terms of concept of managing social phenomena, it's a process of managing diversity. And I would like to, and when I combine these 2 aspects, so I think it's very important. I mean, diversity and human rights. So I mean, I'm always starting to tell my students that they really read over, but very, very carefully, the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights. But it's very important that you interpret correctly this famous first sentence of the Human Rights Declaration on Human Rights, that all human beings are born free in their dignity and rights. And you should, when you speak about diversity, you should just like to reverse this sentence, that all people are first of all human beings, Because when we speak about diversity, we first have to realize that all of us are human beings with their own dignity and rights. And then when we speak about diversity, that while we are all human beings, at the same time, we are human beings with a number of aspects of our own personal identity, being it either ethnicity or language or religion or whatever else. And we are only equal when we accept each other's diverse features. This is just the starting point. I would like to show you a couple of slides. What does inclusivity or managing of diversity means in special Slovak context? You know, because it's not an abstract concept, it's a very practical and concrete concept. So I dwell with this maybe 5 or 7 minutes, and then I'll tell you also something about the official position of the Slovak Ministry of Education and Inclusion. Okay, but I would like to use the time for some concrete issues, and I will also dwell with the official documents a little bit. Okay, because I'm here not only as a teacher but also as an official representative of the Slovak Republic, if you allow me. What does diversity and managing of diversity in the special context of Slovakia, you know, this is the ethnic structure of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, maybe 100 years ago. You know, you can hear how it's like a patchwork of various kinds of ethnicities, ethnic groups, a linguistic group just mixed together. Okay. Which is a starting point, maybe sometimes 100 or 120 years ago. This is the ethnic structure of the interwar Czechoslovakia. You mean the borders have changed in the between, the political regime has changed and everything. So this is also quite diverse, okay? So Germans, Hungarians, Ruthenians, Ukrainians, Germans, of course, Romani, which is not shown here because Romani was not registered as a special nationality or national minority, and the Jews are also not here because they were also not considered as national minority, but rather as a religious group. Okay. And now we can come here to the present-day Slovakia. So this is the present-day Slovak ethnic structure, so the Hungarian minority, Ruthenian minority, and we don't see the Roma, but we will see the Roma later. And now the religious structure of Slovak is quite okay. It's quite very colorful, like Catholics, Roman Catholics, Greco-Catholics, Orthodox, Evangelical Protestants, Reformed Protestants, and of course some Jews, which is not seen here, and some Muslims, which is also not seen because there is of course no community where Muslims form a considerable number of portion of population. Now we come to Roma. So this is like the Gypsy migration, of the Roma migrations starting from 90 and how they arrived in Europe throughout the times, and how they arrived to Central Europe, meaning Slovakia, Czech Republic, present Czech Republic, Slovakia, or Hungary, or so. And now this looks like that these are all these different layers of diversity are not isolated from each other because they intermix. Okay, so now if we look at the map of Romani settlements, and this is the combined map of ethnic and linguistic map of Roma communities in Slovakia. So basically, Romani live almost on the whole territory of Slovakia, except of a couple of here places on the north and northwest. And you can see that there are different combinations of Roma. There are Roma that speak only Romani, that has Roma that speak only Slovak, yeah, It's blue. Then you have Romani that are bilingual. I mean Slovak and Romani. There are Romani, this green, that speak only Hungarian. Then there are Romani that speak both Hungarian and Romani, and there are trilingual Roma that speak Hungarian, Roma, and Slovak, and there are also Romani that speak Ruthenian and Romani. So this just the group of Romani is very diverse internally. Okay, so and then when you would like to like design inclusive policies, of course you should take all this into account. It's very difficult, of course, very difficult, and it's not. The state is not always, or the sub-governments are not always successful in doing that. All of us know that. And of course, this is the ethnic, religious, and linguistic structure. But of course, then you are going to add to this also the factor of like of the social inclusion or exclusion, or the question of or the issue of poverty or whatever, or wealth, and which makes it even much more like complicated and difficult for designing proper policies. So and now we can of course this is all all these are like traditional, more or less traditional minorities. So either like linguistic, ethnic, or religious minorities. So it's not that kind of multicultural map that you can see like in Netherlands or in other Western European states, or even in Ghana or somewhere else, which is even much more complicated. So you have, because there you have so-called traditional minorities with their own internal diversity, and then you have also immigrant minorities with their own internal diversity, and these two big diversities mixed together. So it's sometimes even more difficult to design proper policies, including education policies. And there are, of course, very good practices from a couple of Western countries or other countries, maybe even beyond Europe, but there are also some deficiencies, as always. So, in fact, in Slovakia, there are a lot of deficiencies. There have been. Slovakia is still under infringement from the European Commission because of the segregation of Roma. For the segregation of Roma, not all Roma, but those Roma who live in these segregated communities in very poor conditions, it's a huge problem. And of course, Slovakia is trying to solve it. So the Slovak government just a couple of months ago adopted a new Roma strategy, which tries to reflect to all these issues that I mentioned, and also a number of other issues which I didn't mention. I think it's a quite good strategy, but of course, you know that that strategy, you can design good strategies, but the proof of the pudding is of its eating, and of course it needs a lot of effort from the part of not only the state, I mean state means the government, but also from the part of the local or regional self-governments, on the part of the civil society, the schools, and of course, and the Romani themselves, of course, because they should be involved and they should participate and they should be empowered. So that's clear. So we have adopted this new huge and very complex Roma strategy, and at the same time, it was almost at the same time in November last year. So 3 months ago or 4 months ago, the Slovak government has also adopted a new complex strategy of inclusive education. This is the first such a paper or government strategy adopted exactly on inclusive education since 1990, and these two strategies are somehow interconnected in a way. Of course, the strategy of inclusive education is not dealing only with the Roma inclusion, but with all other aspects of inclusion, like the handicapped children, or like migrant minorities, religious, or any kind of other other specificities that should be taken into account in the context of the inclusive education. And now there are so the first action plans to both these new strategies are just being developed, and it's planned to adopt them just in the course of March or April, so very soon. And this I hope that would like create new conditions for achieving real progress. You know that because we had developed a lot of strategies in the last 20 years, the problem was also the practical implementation and the synergies created. You know, because this inclusion is a problem that when you have to do in parallel a lot of things, so that they form synergy. So you might create or develop a good strategy on inclusive education, but if you don't have a good strategy and on the inclusion of those who leave school to the labor market, or you don't have a good strategy or human rights policies, or if you don't combat like racism or xenophobia, so it wouldn't work, of course. Not to speak about the situation of the economic and social situation in those poor settlements. So but I think that which was now adopted. So these two strategies can create real conditions to making progress. Okay. And it was also first time that the education law there was involved a new definition of the inclusion, of the inclusive education, also first time after 1990. There is a definition of inclusive education in the education law, which is also a positive sign. Of course, this is just a definition, so if it would only work if all these strategies and action plans will be somehow realized in the practice. Of course, the European Commission is prepared to help very much, because many of these practical like measures will be financed by EU money. So this is very good that EU is ready to help our countries, I think Slovakia, or Czech Republic, or Hungary, or all the others, where we have problems with inclusion, or that we can use also some EU funds for this. Just one thing that I forget to tell at the beginning when I spoke about human rights, and that is very important, that of course inclusive education can only be realized in peaceful and secure environment. Okay, I'm telling it quite deliberately, okay, because just this morning a war erupted to the east of Slovakia, just behind our borders. So I just would like to join also in this way. So our president and our prime minister who just expressed their solidarity with the Ukrainian people in this moment. I think that it very, very much relates to this topic, because you cannot do good education in war conditions.